The first warning did not come with sirens. It came as a hesitation, a half-second pause in the steady rhythm of radar sweeps inside the Air Defense Sector Operations Center at Langley Air Force Base, Virginia. The room was windowless, fluorescent lit, and smelled faintly of burned coffee and ozone from aging electronics. Rows of consoles glowed green and amber, each manned by airmen who had learned through repetition and discipline to trust patterns more than instincts. That pause, barely perceptible, was enough. Second Lieutenant Evan Cole, 26 years old, fresh silver bars still too clean for comfort, leaned forward in his chair. He did not speak. He simply stared at the scope in front of him, eyes narrowing, breathing, slowing. He had learned in training that panic was loud. Real danger was quiet. The track was civilian. Call sign Pacific AR-172, a wide-body commercial airliner inbound from Frankfurt to Washington Dulles, 12,000 feet over the Atlantic, descending on schedule, transponder active, flight plan filed, everything normal, almost. Radar, confirmed track Delta 37, Evans said, voice level, precise. Senior Airman Lopez leaned over his console. Confirming, altitude steady, speed within envelope. Evan didn't look away. Confirm secondary radar return. A pause. A longer one this time. Stand by. In the room, conversation softened. Chairs stopped creaking. Even the hum of the HVAC seemed to recede. Lieutenant? Lopez said carefully. Secondary return is intermittent. Evans straightened. Say again. Primary radar solid. Secondary transponder is blinking. Not a full drop. Just enough to notice, Evan finished. He tapped his headset. Weapons, this is surveillance. We've got a civilian inbound with unstable mode S, request cross-check, a calm voice replied. Copy, surveillance. Checking now. Evan exhaled through his nose. Transponder flickers happened. Equipment aged. Pilots made mistakes. 99 times out of 100, it was nothing. But the 100th time was why the room existed. On the far wall, a digital clock ticked over to 02:14 local. That was when the second warning arrived. Not from radar, from space. The secure phone on the operations floor rang once. No one jumped. That phone never rang twice. The watch commander, Major Rebecca Shaw, crossed the room and lifted the receiver. She listened without interrupting, her expression tightening not in alarm, but in focus, the look of someone assembling a mental checklist at speed. Yes, sir, she said. Understood. She hung up and turned. All stations, listen up. The room snapped to attention without standing. Headsets adjusted. Pens stilled. We've got satellite tracking confirmation of 2 high-speed military aircraft lifting from an unsanctioned airfield in the eastern Mediterranean approximately 9 minutes ago. Profile and acceleration match MiG-29s. A murmur rippled through the room before discipline crushed it. Current trajectory suggests an intercept path toward civilian traffic corridors over the North Atlantic. Silence. Evan felt his pulse in his throat. Major Shaw continued. NORAD has elevated posture to air defense warning yellow. This is not public. This is not political. This is our lane. She looked directly at Evan. Lieutenant Cole, your lead surveillance on Pacific Air 172. I want your eyes on that track like it owes you money. Yes, ma'am. The room moved. Data streams multiplied. Maps zoomed. Tracks extrapolated into future arcs. The Atlantic suddenly felt very small. Evan keyed his mic again. Pacific Air 172. This is NORAD surveillance. Verify transponder functionality and state intentions. Static. Then a calm professional voice answered. NORAD surveillance. Pacific Air 172. Transponder appears functional on our end. No anomalies reported. We are continuing descent as filed. The voice was American. Mid-40s, maybe. Controlled. No stress. Too controlled. Evan frowned. Pacific 172, confirm you are receiving no radar interference or avionics faults. Negative NORAD, all systems nominal. Major Shaw watched Evan closely now. Lieutenant, she said quietly. What's your read? Evan hesitated. Rank said answer quickly. Instinct said think carefully. Ma'am, he said, the aircraft is clean on primary radar, but the transponder flicker isn't random. It's periodic, almost deliberate. Explain. It drops for exactly 0.7 seconds every 90 seconds. That's not a fault. That's a cycle. A beat. Major Shaw nodded once. Could be spoofing, yes ma'am, or counter-surveillance testing. On a civilian airliner, that's what bothers me. The major turned to the room. Scramble posture remains cold until confirmed hostile, but I want Langley alert fighters on 5-minute readiness. Yes ma'am, came the chorus. Outside, on the darkened flight line, 2 F-22 Raptors sat silent, their pilots already walking toward them, helmets under arms, faces unreadable. At 35,000 feet, Captain Daniel Mercer rested his left hand lightly on the yoke. The cockpit of the airliner was dim, illuminated by instrument glow and the faint reflection of starlight on the windscreen. The first officer, Tom Reyes, monitored descent calculations, unaware that the most dangerous airspace in the world was quietly forming around them. Daniel Mercer had flown combat missions before Reyes had finished high school. He had flown with missiles on his wings, flames behind his engines, and the knowledge that someone on the ground was actively trying to kill him. Now, he wore a civilian uniform, white shirt, 4 stripes, calm smile, and a classified past buried beneath layers of official silence. Mercer had been a Top Gun instructor for 8 years. He had taught aggressor tactics, taught young pilots how enemies thought, how they hunted, how they exploited hesitation. He had been quietly retired out, not for age, but for knowing too much during a procurement scandal that never reached the newspapers. Tonight, he was not supposed to matter. That was the problem. A soft chime sounded. Mercer glanced at the radar warning receiver, a device that did not belong in a civilian cockpit, hidden behind a modified panel. 2 spikes appeared, high speed. Closing. He did not react outwardly. Tom, Mercer said evenly, do me a favor. Pull up the North Atlantic contingency checklist. Reyes looked over. Sir? Just do it. Reyes complied. Puzzled, Mercer adjusted his headset. NORAD surveillance. Pacific Air 172. Go ahead, Pacific 172. Evan Cole's voice replied. Mercer paused just long enough to choose his words. Lieutenant, he said, I need you to listen carefully. You are about to see 2 fast movers on your scope that do not belong to any NATO inventory. Evan's blood went cold. And when you do, Mercer continued, I need you to trust me when I tell you this aircraft is not the target. Evan swallowed. Then what is, sir? Mercer's eyes flicked to the radar. The test, he said, and whether anyone on your side still remembers how to pass it. The klaxon at Langley did not scream. It growled. A low, urgent tone rolled across the alert barn, vibrating through steel beams and concrete floors. It was a sound designed not to frighten, but to focus, to strip away hesitation and leave only motion. Captain Ryan Hale was already moving when it sounded. Helmet on. Gloves snapped tight. G-suit half-zipped as he jogged toward Raptor AF-093, his breath fogging in the cold Virginia night. Years of training compressed into muscle memory. He did not think about why the alert had come. He trusted that someone else had done the thinking. Behind him, his wingman, Lieutenant Kara Voss, matched pace, jaw set, eyes forward. She was younger, sharper, and had the unsettling calm of someone who had never been wrong in the air. 5-minute posture just became real, Hale said into his mask as ground crew swarmed the jet. Copy, Voss replied. You look disappointed. I was hoping for coffee first. The ground chief gave a thumbs up, ladders dropped away, engines spooled with a rising whine that became a physical presence, pressing against the chest, rattling the teeth. Inside the cockpit, Hale's world narrowed to green symbology and checklist cadence. Langley Tower, Raptor 1, 2 ship, request immediate departure. Raptor 1, cleared hot. Godspeed. The runway lights blurred, then the night fell away. Back inside the operations center, the air had thickened. Evan Cole watched the tracks converge, 2 unknowns racing westward at supersonic speed, skimming the edge of controlled airspace, their signatures now unmistakable. Confirmed, Lopez said quietly. They're not squawking anything friendly. Major Shaw stood rigid, one hand braced on the console. Weapons posture, defensive only, came the reply. White House has been notified. SecDef looped in. That last sentence changed everything. When Washington entered the room, rules became elastic, decisions stretched, responsibility diffused. Evan hated that part. Pacific 172, Evan said into his mic. We are tracking unidentified military aircraft on your bearing. Maintain current heading and altitude. Do not maneuver unless instructed. A pause. Then Mercer's voice. Understood, Lieutenant. For what it's worth, this is where they want you passive. Evan closed his eyes briefly. Captain Mercer, how do you know that? Because that's how I would do it. Major Shaw shot Evan a look. He muted the channel. Lieutenant, explain. Evan swallowed. Ma'am, the captain's tone, his awareness, his timing, this isn't a coincidence. He knows their playbook. Major Shaw studied him for a long second. Then, background? Evan shook his head. Nothing civilian, but sir-level confidence. She exhaled slowly. We don't profile civilians. No, ma'am, Evan agreed. But sometimes civilians profile us. Before she could respond, a new voice cut in. Flat, authoritative, unmistakably political. This is Deputy Undersecretary Harold Knox, joining from the Pentagon. The room stiffened. Major Shaw, Knox continued, you are to hold all interceptors outside visual range unless hostile intent is explicitly demonstrated. We are not escalating. Shaw's jaw tightened. Sir, unidentified foreign fighters are closing on a U.S.-bound civilian aircraft. And until they fire, Knox replied, they are a diplomatic problem, not a military one. Evan felt something twist in his chest. Sir, Shaw said carefully, with respect, waiting for a shot may be too late. Knox's voice cooled. That is not your call. The line went dead. Silence followed. Then Major Shaw turned to Evan. Keep talking to that pilot. At 40,000 feet, Captain Hale eased the throttles. The Raptors sliced through the darkness, invisible to most radar, their presence known only by intent. Hale's display painted the unknowns now. 2 sharp chevrons, aggressive vectors. Raptor 2, you see this? Crystal, Voss replied. They're not just intercepting, they're bracketing. Hale nodded grimly. Classic intimidation maneuver. Herding, civilians the sheep. Yeah, rules of engagement scrolled in Hale's mind like unwanted subtitles. Do not fire. Do not lock. Do not provoke. He hated rules written by people who never flew. Langley, Raptor 1, Hale transmitted. We have visual range closure in 6 mics. Recommend forward positioning. A pause. Then Major Shaw's voice clipped. Approved to shadow only. Weapons cold. Hale grimaced. Copy. The Migs appeared first as heat blooms, then as dark shapes against the stars, sleek, predatory, unmistakably armed. Raptor 2, Hale said softly. Remember, don't blink. Inside Pacific Air 172, passengers slept, read, or stared blankly at seatback screens. They felt nothing unusual, no turbulence, no alarms, just another night flight over dark water. In the cockpit, Mercer felt everything. The radar warning spikes sharpened. He toggled a hidden switch. A faint tone sounded, one no civilian system produced. Tom, Mercer said gently, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Reyes looked over, uneasy. Captain? There are 2 foreign fighters approaching us at high speed. This aircraft is not in immediate danger, but it could become leverage. Reyes stared. Sir, how do you… Mercer raised a hand. Later, he keyed the mic. NORAD, Pacific 172, go ahead, Evan replied instantly. Lieutenant, Mercer said, you have Raptors inbound, correct? Evan hesitated. Affirmative, they will be ordered to hold back. Evan's breath caught. How do you know that? Because someone in your chain values optics over lives. Major Shaw leaned closer, listening. Mercer continued. The Migs will perform a head-on pass. They'll want the footage. They'll want your hesitation recorded. Sir, Evan said, what do you recommend? Mercer did not answer immediately. He glanced at the instrument panel, at the airliner he could not maneuver like a fighter, at the passengers who would never know his name. Then he said quietly, I recommend moral courage. The Migs closed to visual range. Hale could see the pilot's helmet now, could see the slight roll of wings, a taunt. Raptor 1, Voss said, voice tight. They're painting us. Copy. Hale felt the itch in his hands, the desire to respond, to assert dominance, to end the game. Langley, Hale said, Migs are within unsafe proximity to civilian traffic. Request permission to interpose. Static. Then Major Shaw. Stand by. Seconds stretched. Inside the Pentagon, Harold Knox watched a live feed, lips pressed thin. Advisors murmured, no one wanted to be responsible. In the cockpit of Pacific 172, Mercer made a decision. He reached forward and did something no civilian pilot was trained to do. He adjusted the airliner's heading 2 degrees, not evasive, assertive. Pacific 172, Evans said sharply. Verify heading change. Mercer's voice was calm. Lieutenant, I am preventing a geometry that ends badly. Knox's voice burst onto the channel. Who authorized that maneuver? Mercer ignored him. Raptor 1, Mercer said instead, switching frequencies with practiced ease. This is Captain Mercer, former Navy, Top Gun instructor, callsign Atlas. Hale's heart skipped. Sir? Hale replied. They're testing you, Mercer said. Do not mirror. Cut across their nose. Slow. Make it clear you're not afraid. Hale did not wait for permission. Raptor 2, he said. Follow me. They banked. The Migs hesitated. Just for a second. It was enough. The sky did not explode. That was what surprised everyone. 2 American stealth fighters slid across the MiG's projected path, not aggressively, not passively, but with a confidence so precise it felt personal. The maneuver was clean, measured, and unmistakably intentional. It said, "We see you, we are not afraid, and we are not leaving." For a moment, the 3 aircraft formations existed in a fragile geometry, angles and velocities balanced on judgment rather than force. Then one of the MiGs broke formation. Not away, toward the airliner. Seconds that don't fit in reports. Raptor 1, Caravos snapped. MiG 2 is diving toward the civilian. Hale's instincts screamed. His training answered. He rolled inverted and dropped his nose, engines responding instantly, the Raptor's power pressing him back into the seat. Rules of engagement evaporated under the weight of proximity. Langley, Hale said, voice tight, we are executing defensive interposition, static. Then Major Shaw, low and fast. Do it. The MiG pilot saw it too late. Hale's jet cut between the fighter and the airliner, a dark blade through starlight. He did not lock weapons. He did not flare. He simply occupied space. The MiG jerked upward, afterburners flaring white-hot as it clawed for altitude. Splash! No! Voss corrected herself, breathing hard. They disengaged. The MiGs peeled away, banking east, their aggression collapsing into speed and distance. But they did not run. They climbed and climbed. Langley, Lopez said from the operations floor. They're going vertical, high-altitude exit. Major Shaw exhaled. They got what they wanted. Evan frowned. Ma'am, what was that? Inside Pacific Air 172, Captain Mercer steadied the aircraft, returning to course as if nothing had happened. Passengers slept on. A child snored softly in 22B. In the cockpit, First Officer Reyes stared at Mercer as if seeing him for the first time. Top Gun? Reyes said quietly. Mercer did not smile. Once, Reyes swallowed. Why are you flying a commercial jet? Mercer's eyes remained on the horizon. Because sometimes the safest place to hide is in plain sight. At Langley, Evan Cole listened as Major Shaw relayed Mercer's identity up the chain. Captain Daniel Mercer, former Navy, instructor, Top Gun, callsign Atlas. Forced early retirement 7 years ago following testimony in a classified procurement inquiry. A pause on the secure line. Then Knox's voice returned, cooler now, less certain. That information was sealed. Yes, sir, Shaw replied. Apparently not sealed enough. Evan watched Knox's name blink on the display. The man who had ordered restraint now faced a different problem, a witness who had re-entered the frame. Lieutenant Cole, Shaw said, turning to Evan. You've been talking to him the whole time. What's your read? Evan chose his words carefully. Ma'am, he's not improvising. He's countering. Countering what? Someone who wanted this to go wrong, but not too wrong. 3,000 miles away, in a secure sublevel beneath a nondescript building, a file was opened for the first time in years. Project Harborline, a joint defense initiative quietly shelved after cost overruns, missing hardware, and a whistleblower whose credibility had been professionally dismantled, Atlas. Mercer, the man who had refused to sign off on a system that blurred the line between civilian and military tracking, one that could mask fighters as commercial traffic or vice versa, a system that would make tonight's incident possible. In the Pentagon, Knox felt sweat gather at his collar. Major Shaw, he said, voice measured, this pilot, Mercer, should not be communicating with combat assets. Sir, Shaw replied, he already has. and he will cease. Evan leaned forward. Sir, with respect, he prevented escalation. Knox's voice hardened. Lieutenant, you are not cleared to assess strategic outcomes. No, sir, Evan said, pulse pounding. But I am cleared to assess patterns, and this wasn't rogue behavior. It was rehearsal. Silence. Then Knox said quietly, That will be all, Lieutenant. The channel closed. Major Shaw looked at Evan. For a moment, rank dissolved. You just painted a target on yourself, she said. Evan nodded. Ma'am, it was already there. Pacific Air 172 began its descent toward Dulles under a sky now crowded with unseen watchers. A new voice joined the channel. Captain Mercer, this is Deputy Undersecretary Knox. Mercer closed his eyes briefly. Then, I was wondering when you'd call. You violated multiple federal aviation protocols. Mercer smiled thinly. I saved you a war. That is not your determination to make. No, Mercer agreed. It's yours. And you almost failed. The cockpit was silent except for the hum of engines. Why are you here, Captain? Knox asked. Mercer's voice softened. Because you buried a system that shouldn't exist. And tonight someone tried to prove it still works. And you think exposing it midair was appropriate? I think, Mercer said, that if it had succeeded, you'd be standing in front of cameras explaining why 2 foreign fighters almost forced down a civilian airliner. Knox said nothing. Mercer continued. You sidelined me because I wouldn't sign off on Harbor Line. You called me unstable. You ended my career. A beat. But you forgot something, Mercer said. Pilots remember the sky. At Langley, Evan Cole removed his headset and rubbed his eyes. Major Shaw stood beside him. You okay? Yes, ma'am. You realize this is going to get ugly. Evan nodded. Yes, ma'am. She studied him. Why did you speak up? Evan thought of the blinking transponder, the geometry, the way Mercer had anticipated fear. Because, Evan said, someone trained them, and someone trained us. And I don't want to be the officer who froze because a man with a title told me to. Shaw's expression softened, just slightly. Get some water, she said. We're not done. The Migs never returned. Satellite feeds showed them landing at the same unsanctioned field they had launched from, their mission complete. But the data they gathered, reaction times, intercept vectors, command hesitation, had already been transmitted. What they did not expect was the other transmission. Mercer had recorded everything. The flicker, the geometry, the orders to stand down, and the moment when a young lieutenant and 2 fighter pilots chose courage over caution. As Pacific Air 172 touched down smoothly at Dulles, passengers applauded softly, grateful for nothing more than a safe landing. Mercer remained seated for a moment after shutdown. He looked out the cockpit window at the dawn. Lieutenant Cole, he said into the mic one last time, you passed. Evan's throat tightened. Passed what, sir? Dawn crept across the eastern seaboard like a reluctant witness. At Langley Air Force Base, the alert barn doors were open now, sunlight spilling across oil-stained concrete where the Raptors rested, silent, lethal, patient. Captain Ryan Hale sat on the edge of a folding chair, helmet on the ground between his boots, sweat cooling on his neck. He replayed the intercept again and again in his head, the moment he chose to move without permission, the moment he crossed an invisible line. He had saved lives. He also knew, with the clarity that came only after adrenaline faded, that someone would make him pay for it. Inside a secure conference room, the air was colder than necessary. Major Rebecca Shaw stood at the head of the table, hands clasped behind her back. Across from her sat 3 civilians in tailored suits and 1 uniformed general whose face betrayed nothing. Deputy Undersecretary Harold Knox spoke first. Let's be clear, he said. Last night's events constitute a breakdown in command discipline. Shaw did not blink. Sir, last night's events prevented a hostile foreign power from coercing a civilian aircraft in U.S. airspace. Knox leaned forward. No weapons were fired. No hostile intent was confirmed. General Whitaker finally spoke. Intent is not always a missile lock, Mr. Knox. Knox shot him a look. General, this is not about theory. This is about control. We do not freelance air defense based on instincts and retired pilots with grudges. Shaw felt heat rise in her chest. Captain Mercer's information aligned with observed data. Knox smiled thinly. Captain Mercer should not exist in this conversation. The general's eyes hardened. He exists because someone put him in the air. Silence. Knox exhaled slowly. This will be handled internally. Second Lieutenant Evan Cole waited outside another conference room, uniform pressed, posture perfect. Inside, his career was being weighed by people who had never seen a radar scope flicker at 2 in the morning. A door opened. "Lieutenant Cole," an aide said. "They're ready." Evan stepped in. Knox did not invite him to sit. "Lieutenant," Knox said, "you exceeded your authority by engaging a civilian pilot in tactical discussion." Evan met his gaze. "Sir, I engaged an experienced aviator who had situational awareness relevant to an unfolding threat. You are not trained to assess that." "No, sir," Evan said evenly. "But I am trained to recognize patterns of hostile behavior." Knox's voice sharpened. "You are trained to follow procedure." Evan nodded. "Yes, sir. Then explain why you didn't." Evan took a breath. He thought of Mercer's voice, of the blinking transponder, of the MiG sliding toward a jet full of sleeping civilians, because procedure assumed good faith, Evan said, and the enemy did not. A long pause followed. General Whitaker studied Evan with open curiosity now. "You understand," Knox said, "that this answer will not protect you." "Yes, sir." "Then why give it?" Evan's voice did not waver. "Because it's the truth." Captain Daniel Mercer did not leave the airport through the terminal. 2 men met him on the tarmac, badges discreet, expressions professional. "Captain Mercer," one said, "you're requested for a debrief." Mercer nodded. "I assumed?" They escorted him to a windowless room beneath the airport, walls bare except for a flag and a camera lens dark as a pupil. Knox appeared on a screen. "You recorded classified communications," Knox said. Mercer leaned back in his chair. "I recorded evidence. You were ordered not to interfere." "I was ordered out of the Navy for refusing to lie," Mercer replied. "You don't get to order me now." Knox's jaw tightened. "You are a civilian." "Yes," Mercer said softly. "And last night that saved you." Knox changed tactics. "Release that footage and you will face prosecution." Mercer smiled faintly. "Bury it, and you'll face something worse." "What's that?" Mercer leaned forward. "History." By mid-morning, rumors spread through Langley like wildfire. Hale and Voss were grounded pending review. Evan Cole was reassigned to administrative duty temporarily. Major Shaw's authority was quietly curtailed. None of it was public. That was the point. In the quiet of the base chapel, Major Shaw sat alone, hands folded, staring at nothing. Evan entered hesitantly. "Ma'am?" She looked up. "You should be packing." Evan frowned. "Sir?" "Career-wise," she clarified. "They'll move you somewhere harmless, somewhere quiet." Evan absorbed that. "I understand." Shaw studied him. "Do you regret it?" Evan shook his head. "No, ma'am. Good," she said. "Neither do I." At the Pentagon, an envelope crossed a desk it was never meant to reach. Inside, Mercer's recording. Full-spectrum data, unedited, along with a note. "You taught us to recognize the truth in motion." We did. The recipient was a 4-star general with nothing left to lose. He watched. He listened. He made a call. That evening, as news outlets reported a vague airspace irregularity with no details, a classified briefing convened at the highest level. The footage played. The MiG's approach, the transponder flicker, the order to hold back, the interposition maneuver. No commentary, no spin. When it ended, the room was silent. Finally, the general spoke. "Someone tested our spine." No one disagreed, and someone passed. Eyes turned, not to Knox, but to the paused frame of 2 Raptors cutting across the night sky. By nightfall, the quiet punishments stopped escalating. Evan Cole was not dismissed. Ryan Hale and Kara Voss were returned to flight status. Major Shaw received no apology, but her authority was restored, and Project Harborline was reopened. Knox received a call informing him he would be taking time away from public service. He understood the language. 2 weeks later, Mercer boarded another aircraft, this time as a passenger. Evan Cole stood on the jet bridge, assigned as liaison for reasons neither of them needed explained. Mercer paused. "They'll never say thank you." Evan nodded. "I didn't expect them to." Mercer extended a hand. Evan shook it. "You remind me of my first students," Mercer said. Quiet, watching everything. Evan allowed himself a small smile. "You remind me why?" Mercer turned toward the cabin, then stopped. "One more thing, Lieutenant." "Yes, sir?" "When they tell this story," Mercer said, "they won't use our names." Evan replied, "That's okay." Mercer nodded. "It always is. The sky forgot them quickly." That was the first thing Evan Cole learned after everything was over. Within days, the Atlantic returned to being just water on a map. The radar scopes returned to their familiar rhythm. Civilian flights crossed invisible lines without incident. The Migs became lines in classified briefings, then footnotes, then silence. History, as always, moved on. But the people did not. Langley Air Force Base settled into routine with the efficiency of an organism that had survived a brief illness and resumed breathing. Morning formations, engine tests, paperwork stacked neatly into meaning. Captain Ryan Hale flew again. On his first post-incident sortie, he pushed the Raptor just enough to feel the resistance of the air remind him who he was. Caravos flew on his wing, silent, precise. They did not talk about that night. They didn't need to. Some experiences rewired judgment. They lived in reflexes now. Hale landed, taxied in, and shut down. As the canopy lifted, the ground crew gave him the same nod they always had. Nothing ceremonial. That mattered more than applause. Second Lieutenant Evan Cole did not become famous. He was not fast-tracked. He was not interviewed. His name did not appear in any citation or release. Instead, he was reassigned back to operations, quietly, deliberately, placed where judgment mattered more than rank. On his first night back on watch, Evan sat at the console as the lights dimmed and the room settled into its familiar hum. Another civilian flight crossed the scope. Another transponder blinked, once. Evan leaned forward. This time, it was nothing. He sat back, hands steady. He understood now that vigilance was not paranoia. It was respect for consequences. Major Rebecca Shaw passed behind him, paused, and rested a hand briefly on the back of his chair. No words. None were needed. Captain Daniel Mercer disappeared again, not into obscurity, into peace. He declined interviews, declined advisory roles, declined the chance to return to uniform, offered quietly by people who now pretended they had always supported him. Instead, he taught, not at Top Gun, not on a base. He taught young civilian pilots, men and women who would never fire a missile but who carried lives every day. He taught them how to read the sky, how to recognize patterns, how to stay calm when others wanted them afraid. Sometimes, late in the evening, he watched airliners cross overhead, contrails catching the sunset. He never wondered if he had done the right thing. He wondered only how many others would. When the time came, the file that would not stay buried, Project Harbor Line, was dismantled quietly. No headlines, no trials, just audits, funding cuts, silent removals. Harold Knox's name vanished from briefings. His office was reassigned, his legacy reduced to a cautionary reference spoken carefully in closed rooms. The system he had protected never flew again, and that too would never be announced. Months later, Evan received a handwritten letter, no return address, inside a single page. Lieutenant, you once asked what the test was. It's simple and it never changes. When authority and conscience diverge, which one do you serve? You chose well. Atlas. Evan folded the letter and placed it in his locker. He did not frame it. He did not share it. He carried it quietly where it belonged. On a clear evening, long after the incident faded from even classified memory, a civilian aircraft cruised peacefully toward the United States. No MiGs followed. No fighters scrambled. No one noticed anything unusual, and that was the point, because the strongest victories leave no scars on the sky, only on the people who prevented them. Power tests, systems. Fear tests, obedience. But moments like these test character. Not everyone who stands watch will be remembered. Not every act of courage will be rewarded, and not every truth will be welcomed when spoken. But when quiet professionals choose integrity over comfort, When young officers trust judgment over silence, when courage appears without asking permission, the world keeps flying safely through the dark. And that is enough.